You know, some days just start off looking like nothing special. The sun's out, good music's playing in the car, you got that rare brand of coffee in your grocery bag, and you're just looking forward to a quiet afternoon, right? That's exactly where my day started. I pulled into my own driveway, yeah, the one with my name on the mortgage, feeling like I'd finally caught a break. Popped the trunk, started with the cold stuff like anyone with half a brain, and right then boom, first grenade lobbed into my peace and quiet. You'd think your landlord would have higher standards than to let someone like you drive a car that leaks oil all over the concrete. I froze mid-step, bag of milk and yogurt hanging from my hand. That voice? It was like nails on a chalkboard, if the chalkboard could also scream. There she was, me new neighbor, perched on her property line, hands on hips, blonde hair yanked back so tight it looked painful. No need for formal introductions. I already knew her type. The self-appointed keeper of the block, the one who trims her hedges with military precision and glares at squirrels like they're criminal masterminds. Excuse me? Was all I could muster, because really what do you say to that? My brain was still catching up, juggling all the insults, landlord. One of you people, and her critique of my spotless car, which, by the way, had just been serviced last month. The only stains on my driveway were faded relics from before I bought the place. There's no oil, I told her, pointing out the clean concrete. She just scoffed. This disgusted little noise. Insisting she saw a rainbow, she called it a clear violation. She accused me of degrading property values with my supposed carelessness.
I walked over, checked for myself-nothing.
Just plain, boring, innocent concrete. I think you're mistaken, I said, keeping it civil as I could. But she was already marching into lecture mode, talking about principles and how people like me don't understand the rules or appreciate standards. She even brought up her kids, like my car's imaginary oil stains were corrupting the youth. And let's be real, the racism was thicker than Texas humidity, barely pretending to be about neighborhood aesthetics. I tried to disengage, told her I needed to get my groceries in, wished her a nice day, hoping she'd go back to terrorizing her roses. But oh no, that was just Act 1. You're not going anywhere, she said, dropping her voice into this smug little growl. I've already called my lawyer. He's on his way. I almost laughed out loud. She called her lawyer over a made-up oil spot? Bluff, right? She was just flexing, or so I thought. 5 minutes later, here comes this silver sedan trying its hardest to look like a Mercedes, but coming up short. Out steps the klitschy bald guy in a suit a size too tight, leather-bound clipboard in hand, marching up like he's about to argue before the Supreme Court. My neighbor lit up like Times Square, announced me like I was a criminal on parade. He examined my car, driveway, scribbled something on his clipboard, then finally looked at me with these beady little eyes, telling me I was in violation of community standards and property tours. Yeah, that's a real word, apparently. He claimed my car had a prochemical leak, violating environmental ordinances and some homeowner's agreement. Then she measured my car's parking, claiming it was 3 degrees off from the house, and that this was a serious infraction. I just blinked at him. 3 degrees off axis. It felt like I'd wandered into a theater of the absurd, except I was the only one without a script. I wanted to tell them both to get lost, but I saw that glint in her eye. She wanted me to get mad, to fit the story she'd written about me in her head. So I played along. I pulled out my phone, started recording, and said, 3 degrees? My goodness, I'll fix that right away. The lawyer looked surprised. I was expecting a fight, not the world's most polite compliance. I reparked my car with all the drama of a teenager at their first driver's test, then asked if it was satisfactory. He did a full circle around my car, got down on one knee, and finally conceded, it's an improvement, but we'll be monitoring the situation. They kept going. The next target? My welcome mat. He pointed at it. Blue. Says, hope you brought tacos. A gift from my sister, and declared it in gross violation of the Suburban Aesthetic Accord. It had to be earth-toned, no text, no whimsy. She chimed in, calling it tacky and fraternity house stuff. I played the part, feigned embarrassment, and tossed the mat inside. There, is that better? I asked. For now, the lawyer replied. but a full inspection will be necessary. By now, our little show had drawn an audience. Semi-sweet elderly neighbor peeking through her curtains, and across the street, the neighborhood's unofficial gossip, watering already drenched hydrangeas with a little too much interest. Emboldened, the lawyer stepped further onto my property and announced the next problem. "Your landscaping." He pointed at my boxwood bush, called it non-native invasive species, and insisted it violated local horticultural mandates. I pointed out that my neighbor's own hedge was the exact same plant. She claimed hers were genetically superior varietal, while mine were common, cheap, and feral. Feral. They called my bush feral. They demanded I dig it up. I pressed him for the legal basis, and the lawyer stumbled, muttering something about the doctrine of ad colum, which, for anyone who's not a lawyer, or for me who reads a lot, is an old, basically obsolete property law about mineral and air rights, not landscaping. I called him on it, complimenting his impressive legal knowledge. And he seemed to puff up, but it was all hot air. They gave me a 24-hour deadline to remove my feral bush or face punitive damages. For a bush, I agreed to take it under advisement. But the theater wasn't over. They then critiqued the way I walked from my car to my front door. I'm not kidding, erratic and non-conforming ambulation. I wasn't sticking to the path. So they made me do a demonstration walk, robot-style, arms stiff, straight down the path, turning with a sharp pivot like I was being graded in a military parade. "Maintain this standard going forward," the lawyer said, and for the first time I felt something snap. This wasn't just harassment anymore. It was a ritual of humiliation, and I was done being the victim. After they left, my elderly neighbor came over, worried for me, and that's when I learned this wasn't the first time. The previous family, Rodriguez, she said, had been hounded out by the same woman and her lawyer, called the city over their kid's bike, tried to get their dog labeled a menace, even threatened over the color of their mailbox. And always with that same bald lawyer. Suddenly, I realized this was a pattern, not just a bad day. The next morning, I wasn't surprised when the fake lawyer showed up again, this time to serve me with a cease and desist about my shrubbery. The paper was laughably bad. Misspelled words, fake legal codes, and the unforgettable line, "You will be prostituted to the fullest extent of the law." Prostituted, not prosecuted. I took high-res photos of every detail. Now I had hard proof. They didn't let up. The next day, they came after my lawnmower, claiming the frequency of my quiet electric motor violated the Suburban Serenity Act. Then it was my mulch too dark, not cedar or cypress, creating a somber and depressing visual landscape. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about mulch or oil stains. It was about having a black neighbor. They couldn't say it outright, so they buried their hate under absurd rules and fake laws. That was the last straw. I got methodical. Reverse searched their legal services LLC didn't exist. Ran the number on the cease and desist burner phone. The lawyer? Reverse image search turned up a local community theater actor, not a single credential in law, and, as it turned out, the woman's cousin. That was the last piece. This was family harassment, coordinated and weaponized. I pulled all my evidence together: videos, fake documents, screenshots of his theater bio, proof of the burner phone, and the neighbor connection, and found myself the meanest civil rights lawyer in the city. I wanted someone who actually enjoyed crushing bullies. Met with him, told the whole story, showed the evidence. He laughed at the prostituted line, then got deadly serious. "We're not just going to make them stop," he said. "We're going to make them pay." He laid out the plan. Don't tip them off. Wait for them to make the next move. Collect more evidence, let them walk right into a legal trap. And that's exactly what happened. I put the "Hope You Brought Tacos" mat back out, bought more black mulch, and waited. 2 days later, here they came. Righteous as ever, Chip with his clipboard, the woman fuming about flagrant violations. My lawyer pulled up at just the right moment. The air shifted. The two of them looked like school kids who'd just been caught cheating on a test. My actual lawyer called Chip out by name, listed his crimes, and laid out the evidence. Told them we were filing a civil lawsuit for harassment and discrimination, and handing everything to the DA for criminal charges. Chip ran for the car like it was a fire drill, abandoned his cousin without a word. The police showed up minutes later. I gave them everything. They took it seriously. The fallout was brutal. Lawsuit filed, damages and punitive fees sky high. The news spread. The neighborhood turned on her. The actor got charged, his mugshot made the local news, and the theater group dropped him. The woman had to hire a real lawyer, lost the settlement negotiations, and eventually, after everything, had to sell her house. For someone obsessed with property values, that was the final irony. Me? I used the money to donate to a legal aid group, helped others fight bullies like her, and finally landscaped my yard with the wildest, most colorful, non-indigenous plants I could find, darkest mulch included. The new neighbors are wonderful. Sometimes I watch their kids and their golden retriever playing in the yard, and I remember what peace feels like. When I see my "hope you brought tacos" mat or walk across the grass at whatever angle I like, I think about how quickly a normal day can turn into a battleground, but also how standing up and documenting every absurdity can tip the scales back to justice. So, what do you think wears the line between community standards and plain old bullying? Have you ever tangled with someone like this? Drop your stories, your thoughts, your outrage, or your best advice for handling the neighborhood lunatic in the comments. Let's hear where you stand on what's right, what's wrong, and what justice really looks like in your own backyard.